Today's brief covers Wednesday, August 12th, 2026. Welcome to the Biotech Executive Brief, your daily rundown of the developments shaping artificial intelligence, pharma and life sciences, and the broader business landscape. Let's start with AI, where the story continues to be a combination of enormous infrastructure demand, equally enormous investment, and a rapidly expanding ecosystem around AI software development. Cisco provided one of the clearest indicators of just how much money is flowing into AI infrastructure. The company forecast fiscal 2027 revenue above expectations and said it expects approximately $7.5 billion in AI infrastructure revenue from hyperscale customers. Cisco also recorded $9.3 billion in AI-related orders during fiscal 2026. That spending is showing up elsewhere in the infrastructure market. Nebius exceeded quarterly revenue expectations as customers continued competing for AI computing capacity. Cerebras, meanwhile, raised its annual revenue forecast to between $880 million and $890 million. Its shares still fell after quarterly revenue missed expectations, even though its AI cloud revenue quadrupled to $126 million. So, demand for AI infrastructure remains strong, but investors are clearly becoming more selective about how that demand translates into financial performance. Capital is also pouring into companies trying to bring AI deeper into traditional businesses. OpenAI-backed Thrive Holdings raised $2 billion at a $12 billion valuation. Its strategy is a little different from simply selling another AI application. Thrive is acquiring businesses and using AI to transform how they operate. Software development remains another particularly hot part of the market. AI code review company CodeRabbit reached a $1.5 billion valuation in its latest funding round. Blacksmith raised $45 million at a roughly $550 million valuation to provide infrastructure for testing and validating software created with AI coding tools. And Lovable raised another $400 million at a $13.3 billion valuation after reaching approximately $500 million in annualized revenue run rate. There's an interesting second-order effect emerging here. As AI makes it easier to produce more software, companies also need better ways to review, test, and validate all that new code. In other words, AI coding is creating its own supporting industry. The competitive landscape for the underlying models is evolving too. American AI companies are increasing their focus on open-weight models as lower-cost Chinese models attract developers and enterprises. Meta and NVIDIA are among the U.S. companies expanding their open model strategies, with cost and customization becoming increasingly important factors in how businesses choose models. And AI continues moving directly into consumer products. Google introduced its Pixel 11 lineup with additional Gemini capabilities, including accessibility features that can translate American Sign Language captured through a Pixel camera into text. Meta also launched a standalone Facebook Creator Studio app with AI tools built directly into content production workflows. So across AI, the market is broadening. The infrastructure companies are scaling capacity, investors are funding enterprise transformation, coding tools are creating entirely new categories around software validation, and AI is becoming increasingly embedded in everyday devices and applications. Legend Biotech reached an important financial milestone, reporting its first profitable quarter more than 4 years after Carvykti received its initial FDA approval. Carvykti remains the company's primary commercial engine as Legend enters a more mature phase of its growth and faces increasing competition in cell therapy. Eli Lilly is dealing with a very different consequence of commercial interest. The company filed lawsuits against 6 businesses that it says are selling unauthorized versions of retatrutide. The unusual part is that retatrutide is still experimental and has not yet received FDA approval, showing just how much demand has already developed around the next generation of obesity medicines. More broadly, second quarter results were strong across several major biopharma companies. Lilly, Sanofi, Regeneron, and Astellas were among the companies highlighted for particularly strong sales growth despite continuing industry concerns around pricing, patent expirations, and competition. Alpha Sigma agreed to acquire Nordic Pharma, adding the arthritis treatment Jyseleca while expanding its presence across rheumatology, women's health, and ophthalmology. The acquisition also gives Alpha Sigma access to additional geographic markets. On the biotech financing side, Boulevard Bio emerged from stealth with $65 million from Deerfield Management and a portfolio of 3 autoimmune disease programs. Its initial pipeline includes work in IgA nephropathy. Clinical development produced both encouraging and challenging news. Definium Therapeutics reported another phase 3 success for its LSD-based therapy, this time in generalized anxiety disorder. The result follows a separate late-stage success in depression. Aardvark Therapeutics moved in the opposite direction. The company said it will not restart its recently terminated phase 3 studies under their previous designs. The decision follows workforce reductions as the obesity and metabolic disease biotech reassesses its clinical strategy. Manufacturing quality also surfaced again. Fresenius Kabi recalled a U.S. batch of its Actemra biosimilar because of concerns about possible glass particles. The action follows another recent Fresenius recall involving mislabeled pain medication. And in early-stage research, Cytodine's leronlimab generated encouraging preclinical findings in infant macaques. A combination treatment incorporating the antibody eliminated detectable HIV-like virus in the animals, although additional work would be needed to determine whether those findings translate to humans. That brings us to the broader business landscape, where M&A and strategic investment dominated much of the day. Goldman Sachs agreed to acquire ETF provider Neos Investments for up to $2.25 billion. Neos manages approximately $30 billion across 19 ETFs, and the acquisition expands Goldman's position in actively managed and options-based investment products. Bank of America is making a major international investment of its own. The bank agreed to invest approximately $1.9 billion for a 49.9% stake in Jio Financial Services lending business, giving Bank of America a significant new position in India's expanding financial services market. In restaurants, Nelson Peltz's Trion Fund Management is assembling an investor group that could make a bid to take Wendy's private. A formal offer could come in the coming weeks. Media consolidation continues to generate regulatory questions as well. Paramount Skydance said a potential sale of CNN remains one option for resolving California's antitrust challenge to its $110 billion acquisition of Warner Bros. Discovery. CNN could therefore become part of the negotiations needed to preserve the larger transaction. European banking consolidation may also be moving forward. European central bank regulators are leaning toward approving UniCredit's proposed acquisition of Commerzbank, a combination that could significantly reshape the European banking landscape. There was also a leadership update at Home Depot. CEO Ted Decker will take a temporary medical leave expected to last several months. CFO Richard McPhail and Senior Executive Anne-Marie Campbell will jointly oversee CEO responsibilities during his absence. Finally, energy markets remain exposed to geopolitical disruption. The International Energy Agency reduced its 2026 oil supply forecast as disruptions around the Strait of Hormuz continued. OPEC separately lowered its forecast for global oil demand growth in 2026 for the fourth consecutive time, although its outlook remains less pessimistic than the IEA's. That wraps up the Biotech Executive Brief, covering Wednesday, August 12, 2026. Across AI, capital continues flowing into infrastructure, enterprise transformation, and the rapidly growing ecosystem surrounding AI-generated software. In life sciences, strong commercial performance and new financing are being balanced by clinical resets and manufacturing quality challenges. And across the broader economy, major companies continue using acquisitions, strategic investments, and restructuring to position themselves for the next phase of growth. Thanks for listening to the Biotech Executive Brief from Sternbridge Technology Consulting, bringing you the developments across AI, life sciences, and business that matter most.